Right now, I'm sitting in front of what used to be the Circle K that was used in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And in this video, we're gonna be driving around Phoenix, Tempe, Mesa, Scottsdale, not just to find the filming locations for Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but to talk about what happened to those locations. I think out of all of the movies I've done filming locations for, this one has to have the most locations that have either been torn down or changed so heavily that you can't even recognize them anymore. So we are gonna find all the filming locations from the movie, but we're also gonna try and figure out why so many of them don't exist anymore. So let's go see what we can find. So after a brief introduction to our story by Rufus, who's of course played by the legendary George Carlin, we then see Bill and Ted inside Bill's garage having band practice. We're in the middle of a Wild Stallions band rehearsal. Now, over the years, we've discovered that there were two houses that were used for Bill's. One house was used for the interiors in the backyard, and then another house was used for the garage. And for many years, I think up until just within the last year or two, nobody knew where that house was that was used for the garage. And I believe the first person to discover that house was Sean Clark. And believe it or not, that house is located right here in Southern California. And it's this house right here behind me. Sorta. If you're a Bill and Ted's fan, you can probably already see that this does not look like the house that was used in the movie. That's because the house that was used for Bill's garage was torn down. And sadly, pretty recently, I want to say like within the last 5 or 6 years, if you go to Google and you look at the street view, it still looks like the house that was used in the movie. The garage matches up perfectly. I mean, it looks exactly like the one that you see in the movie. So yes, the actual house has been torn down, but it was right there in that area where Bill and Ted had Wild Stallions practice. And as you can see, we're already off to a bad start. It's our first location, and it's been torn down. We get a quick establishing shot of San Dimas High School. In real life, that was Coronado High in Scottsdale, Arizona. And unfortunately, it doesn't look too much like it did in the movie. That's because most of the original buildings have since been torn down. Where this building now sits used to be one of the most recognizable buildings here at Coronado High School, and that's because of the mural that was on the front of it. But it was torn down and replaced with this building. Now you get a good shot of that mural when Bill and Ted are walking in front of the school after class. So right here is where that building used to be that had the mural on it. I believe it was the auditorium. And then right over here is the building that they moved it to. Just glad that they saved the mural. Now, according to what I read, this mural was taken apart piece by piece and then relocated to its current location, which is awesome. I think it's just so cool that they saved at least one thing from back then. You can see this mural a couple of times in the movie, but like I said, you get your best shot of it after class when they're walking in front of the school. You can see it right there behind them. And then you get a really good shot of it when they're getting into Mom's car. Hey, remember when your stepmom was a senior and we were freshmen?
Shut up, Ted!
So although Coronado High is still a fully functional school, really nothing that you see in the movie is still the same here, with the exception of that mural. Now you might recognize this house behind me because some things on it still look the same. This is Ted's house, and a lot of stuff here has been changed, but like I said, some of the stuff is still the same, like those windows right there in front. Those are exactly like you see in the movie. So probably the biggest change here at Ted's house is the roof right there in front. You can see they've extended it out over the porch. In the movie, the roof line is just straight, but they've now extended it out quite a bit. However, the right side of the house, that still looks pretty much identical to how it did in the movie. So Ted tries to sneak into the house, but he's met by his father, and after a lecture about military school, we see Ted come walking out of the front door. Now notice that window on the right side of the door, and then those tall, skinny windows on either side with the bricks right underneath them. There's that window on the right side of the door. It still has those tall, skinny windows and the bricks right underneath. Everything there is still the same. They then jump into Missy's car and take off down the street. And notice that mountain right there. We still get pretty much the exact same view. Now this is not the last time we'll be seeing Ted's house. We then see him inside Bill's bedroom trying to study. But after getting kicked out of Bill's room by his dad, they come walking down the stairs and into the living room. This house right here behind me, this is Bill's house, but only the interiors and the backyard. They never actually show the front of this place. Now, this house was up for sale not too long ago, and there were a lot of pictures put online of the inside of it, and you can see, at least at the time of the listing, the inside looks almost exactly like it did when they filmed Bill and Ted's. Actually, my bad. The house was last on the market in 2012, so who knows what it looks like in there now. But back in 2012, it looked pretty similar. For instance, this is the room that was used for Bill's room, and it turns out what I always thought was a headboard is actually a fireplace. Pretty creative on their part. At least I think that's the same thing. It looks like it's been altered a bit, but the placement of the fireplace and the window, which is blocked by Ted in this shot, are in the exact same place. So after getting kicked out of Bill's bedroom, Bill and Ted head over to the Circle K to try and finish their studying. It was right here in this very spot where Bill and Ted were sitting, doing their homework, trying to figure out when the Mongols ruled China.
Excuse me, when did the Mongols rule China?
I don't know, I just work here.
And of course, this is when things start to get a little weird. So after some deep discussion, Bill and Ted decide to trust Rufus and travel with him through time. I mean, why not? He seems like a nice guy. So although it's still a convenience store and really hasn't changed too much, it's no longer a Circle K, and really that changes everything. And the strange thing is, there's no less than 429,000 Circle Ks around here, so why this one? Why is this the one that they had to change the name of? And just in case you were wondering, they still have the Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure poster inside the store, and the guy that works here was just telling me that people still come in every week asking about the movie. So yes, you can still visit the convenience store where Bill and Ted first meet Rufus, but unfortunately, it's just not the same anymore. So they jump into the phone booth. Ted, Bill, and Rufus travel back in time. First stop, Austria, 1805. And that's where Napoleon accidentally gets blasted into the time circuits. They then find themselves somewhere really amazing.
Oh, it's my house.
That's right, we're back at Ted's house. And the phone booth would have landed right there in the middle of the yard, just beside a tree and right in front of the driveway. Now, unfortunately, that tree is no longer here, and that's the same tree that Napoleon falls out of. Now, that tree would have been right over here in this area, and then right over here is where the phone booth would have been. And if you pay really close attention in that scene, you can see that the brick wall in the driveway is still the same. So they leave Napoleon with Ted's younger brother Deacon, and then they jump into the phone booth and take off back in time to gather more historical figures. Now, this shopping center that I'm currently standing in used to be Carefree Studios, and that's where they built the Old West Town. But Carefree Studios shut down, and then in 1999, the property was sold to developers, demolished, and they built this shopping center. But these rocks right behind me look pretty familiar. Next stop, Athens, Greece, to grab Socrates. Bill and Ted now find themselves in medieval England. Now here's the thing about this scene. I always knew that this was a real castle in Italy. However, I always just thought that they went there and got some establishing shots of it. But I learned from Diane Franklin that they actually filmed inside of that castle. So all of the scenes of them running around inside, that was actually filmed at a real castle. And speaking of Diane Franklin, there she is. Now, I knew the castle was there. I didn't think that you actually went. I thought maybe they used establishing shots. But
no,
so
we actually flew us there, which is interesting because you're thinking like, why wouldn't they just create a set on that and make it happen? But I think probably it was just more economically feasible to just fly the main actors out, and then they hired an Italian crew and Italian extras. So it was a real castle, and it was beautiful. I remember getting there, and what they did is they had to take all of the, like those red barriers, that they put it like a museum. They took them all away, and we got to sit on the original beds that were in the castle. Like we got to touch the tapestry. It was pretty incredible, pretty beautiful. It was right here in this building behind me where Napoleon conquered the Ziggy Pig. Now, at the time of filming, it was a Showbiz pizza, and like most Showbiz pizzas, it became a Chuck E. Cheese. They only filmed interiors here, and the inside has been remodeled so many times that absolutely nothing looks the same. Anyways, back to the time circuits. Bill and Ted then make a quick stop to grab Sigmund Freud, and then Beethoven, and then my favorite go-go, Joan of Arc, and then Genghis Khan, and then last but not least, good old Honest Abe. After conquering the Ziggy Pig, Deacon and his friends bring Napoleon here to this bowling alley, onto lane 11. And although it's still a functioning bowling alley and you can still bowl on lane 11, the interiors have been remodeled dramatically. But check out what movie they're playing over lane 11. Here you can see the snack bar behind Napoleon, and it's still here, but it's changed a lot. It's now supposed to look like an RV. And when it's Napoleon's turn to bowl, Deacon catches him cheating. He was sitting right about here. This area has also been changed dramatically. Napoleon gets up to take his turn and slides right down lane 11. Now, I couldn't get the exact shot without walking out onto the lanes, but he would have been laying right about here. Deacon and his friends decide that they're going to ditch Napoleon, and he tries to chase after him. And I think right here you get the best idea of how much the bowling alley has been remodeled. Even the shot that you get behind the manager of the bowling alley really looks nothing like it did back then. So the manager tosses Napoleon out of the bowling alley, right out of these doors. And we then see Napoleon standing there by himself, and for just a split second, we feel a little bit sorry for him. Now, the view that we get of the shopping center really hasn't changed much. The only thing that I really see different is it no longer says bowl on the front of the bowling alley. We see Missy, Mom, doing some gardening in the backyard, and that's when the phone booth lands right behind her. For this, we're back at Bill's house, the one that was used for the interior shots. And as you can see in these pictures, again, at least in 2012, the backyard looked just like it did when the movie was made. Bill asks his stepmom to drive him to the mall, but she says she's not going to take him anywhere until they do their chores. So, they get all the historical figures to help them out. Can you believe that this kitchen looks exactly the same all these years later? It's crazy. And do you think the people that live here have any idea that Jane from the Go-Go's washed dishes in their kitchen sink? So once they get back to San Dimas, they have to take the historical figures somewhere to learn a little bit about the town. So they take them to the San Dimas Mall. What better place to learn about teenagers in the 80s? That was actually filmed right here at the Metro Center Mall in Phoenix. But just like you probably guessed, within the last couple of years, the Metro Center Mall shut down. Now, there's a pretty cool video that you can find here on YouTube where Sean Clark and Adam the Woo came here during its last few days open, and they did a pretty cool tour of the entire mall. And you see that in that video, the interiors still looked pretty close to how they did when they filmed the movie. So the entire crew ends up getting into a little bit of trouble
and they all end up getting arrested. So I gotta say, I'm pretty excited about this location just because, as far as I know, nobody has found this one yet. I wasn't able to find anything online about this location, and I have to give a huge thank you to my wife for finding this one. She went on the internet and looked up every park in this area and then just started going through every park on Google Maps until she found this exact spot. So thank you. Now, if you didn't already recognize it, this is the park where Bill and Ted go to talk to Ted's little brother Deacon, and they find out that he ditched Napoleon in the middle of San Dimas. Now in this shot, you can see some apartment buildings off in the distance across the street. You can also see a lamppost in the center of the park. Now there's that lamppost. My angle's a little bit off, and those apartment buildings are still there. They're just now blocked by all of those trees. But if we come over to the other side of the park, as promised, there's those apartment buildings. Also, notice behind them, off in the distance, you can see the playground. You can see some swing sets and some other structures. Now, the playground's definitely still there. However, all of the equipment has been updated since the movie was made. Now, I know this is going to sound a little weird, but this might be my favorite location that we visited on this adventure. You ditched Napoleon? Do you realize that you stranded one of Europe's greatest leaders in the middle of San Dimas? He was a dictator. He was a famous dictator. And Bill and Ted realize that there's only one place he would go: Waterloop. That was actually filmed here at Golfland Sunsplash, and this is one of the very few locations that still looks pretty similar to how it did in the movie. Now these opening shots are actually a mixture of two different parks. Raging Waters, actually in San Dimas, California, and Golfland Sunsplash here in Mesa, Arizona. So, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's Waterloop. We then get a really quick shot of Missy driving Bill and Ted and Napoleon to the police station. They're traveling down East Indian School Road, passing North 75th Street in Scottsdale. Right here is where they were traveling down Indian School Road. They've since added a bunch of apartment buildings. And just after they pass 75th Street, you can see a very blurry church behind them. Now, that church is still there, however, it's now blocked by all of these trees, but you can see the steeple peeking out. We see the station wagon come around the corner and pass right by the sheriff's station. There's where the station wagon makes the turn, and that building on the corner has since been torn down, and unfortunately, so has the sheriff's station. They make a U-turn, and then they park right in front of the sheriff's station, and again, unfortunately, it no longer exists. And when Bill and Ted are standing in front right after they find the keys by the sign, you can see a building behind Ted. That's the blacksmith, and it's one of the few buildings on this street that still looks the same. Probably the only way that you can tell that this is where that scene was filmed. Also, that building that you see to the left of Bill with the palm trees in front of it, that also appears to be the same building. Possibly. Palm trees are gone now, though. And of course, for the grand finale of the movie, Bill and Ted give their big presentation in front of the entire school in the school auditorium. And there were actually two locations used for that scene, the first being back at Coronado High School. So roughly right about here is where the old auditorium was. So when they pull up and they're walking into the auditorium, you can see these houses across the street, especially this one right here. Now the exteriors of the auditorium, that was filmed over at Coronado High School, but the interiors, that was filmed at a completely different school. That was filmed at East High, and yep, you guessed it, East High no longer exists, but it used to be right here. So yes, unfortunately, that means the location where the majority of that scene takes place no longer exists. And the movie ends right where it began, right back in Bill's garage in beautiful Southern California. Kind of like my adventure. I started here in Southern California, went to Arizona, and now I'm back. So why have 99% of the filming locations from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure either been torn down or heavily remodeled? Honestly, I don't know. Bad luck maybe? I mean, I know that as time goes by, more and more of these locations that we love are going away, but it really seems like the locations from this movie got hit a little bit harder. Well, that's gonna do it for this video. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.